So you've made millions of dollars and now you're trying to figure out, how do I protect these assets for generations to come? And you've heard about the Rockefellers, you've watched Succession, you've been thinking through, what are these different tools that I can utilize to protect this money both today and in the future? One of those terms that comes up time and time again are trust funds. And trust funds are something that we have a great deal of experience with. We've seen it time and time again be laid out for families to make sure that those assets are protected for that next generation and for generations to come. If we hadn't had a chance to meet, my name is Luke Turner. I am the co-founder of Moment Private Wealth. We help athletes and entrepreneurs get smarter with their money. Today's topic is going to be on trust funds. We're going to dive into them. We're going to talk a little bit more about the different types of trust funds that are out there, what the benefits are to them, and demystify a lot of those concepts that are out there on the internet. So let's go ahead and dive in. All right, so first up, a trust fund. What is it and how can we utilize it? So a trust fund, in the most simple terms, is where you take assets that are in your individual name, you put them into an entity known as a trust, and they're for the benefit of someone else. So if you think about it, there's a couple of key players to be aware of when you're thinking about a trust fund. The first is the grantor. So this is who's actually putting the money into the trust. The second key player is the trustee. Think about the trustee as the person who's in charge of the trust. They have to make sure that the trust rules are followed. They're typically the one that's in charge of deciding who's investing the money, how the money's invested. And then typically the third player is going to be the beneficiary. Okay, so those are the three players: grantor, trustee, and beneficiary. What most people don't understand is that when you think about a trust fund, typically in a trust, there are not going to be significant income tax benefits. Okay, so when you think about income taxes, this is the taxes that we pay on the money that's in these trust funds. Okay, there's a lot of misconceptions where the Rockefellers pay no taxes or these billionaire families pay no taxes. The reality is, money that's in a trust is not going to get this income tax benefit. Okay, typically when we look at trusts, they're going to pay taxes in two ways. Either one, they're going to pay ordinary income taxes, which if you look over here on the corner, you can see the income tax brackets. And then secondarily, there are trust tax rates, which are actually taxed higher than ordinary income tax rates. And you can see those here. So when I think about trusts in general, one of the big misconceptions I want you guys to stay away from is that if you hear somebody telling you that if you put money in a trust, you're not going to pay any taxes, that is malarkey. Stay away. Run the other direction. But there are some significant tax benefits when we look at estate taxes. So let's move on to our second piece, which is, what are the tax benefits of a trust fund? So when we think about a trust fund, the biggest tax benefit that's out there is from an estate tax perspective. So if we think about estate taxes, let's break this down into two key areas. There's our taxable estate, and then there's our non-taxable estate. Easiest way to think about this is if you have roughly $28 million in net worth, and the way you're going to calculate that is all of your assets. So property, investment accounts, businesses, subtract out all your liabilities, so debts, mortgages, business debt, and then add in the death benefit of life insurance. That's going to give you your total net worth. Now, if that net worth is under $28 million, this is not going to apply to you. But for those in the ultra high net worth category, this certainly does apply. Because if you're over $28 million in net worth, you have to pay what are called estate taxes. And if you look over here, you can see this estate tax number is very big. Roughly 40% is what you're gonna pay on any assets over roughly $28 million. So in this example, if you had $100 million net worth, you're going to not pay tax on the first 28, and then the remaining $72 million, you're gonna pay approximately 40% in taxes. That is where trust funds can be very, very handy, where we can take assets that are in your individual name, move them into a trust fund, and then that trust fund can be avoiding all of those estate taxes into the future. But the key is making sure you do this in advance. We're not gonna dive into what I'll call the advanced concepts today on trust funds, but the biggest thing that I want you to keep in mind is that if your net worth is over that $28 million figure, you need to be thinking about trust funds as a way to potentially reduce or eliminate estate taxes in the future. Okay, so that's taxes as it relates to trust funds. And then lastly are protections in trust funds. Okay, so there's a lot of commentary out there around assets being protected from lawsuits and liabilities, and there's a lot of truth to that. So the biggest thing that I would tell you is that when we set up a trust fund, you want to make sure that any kid that is inheriting this money inside of a trust fund, that there are rules and regulations around making sure that that money stays in trust. If money stays in trust, the two biggest benefits is that it is going to be protected from lawsuits and liability claims. So let's say that you leave your son $5 million, it's in a trust fund, it stays in trust, and he starts a business. And that business doesn't go as planned, and he's got $3 million in debt on the business, and that business defaults. Well, what's crazy is that if the money's in trust, those creditors can't actually come after that money. So it allows you to protect the assets that you pass down if they stay in trust from those liabilities. This is where assets not being in your individual name are really important, because if you are sued and you have same situation, you have $5 million that's in a trust fund, and you get sued for $1 million personally, they can't come get those assets because they're not in your name, they're in the name of the trust. So the key is making sure those assets stay in the name of the trust in order to get those two big benefits, which are protection from lawsuits and liabilities. Those are the key things you need to be thinking about as it relates to trust funds. If you have specific questions on trust funds, drop them in the comments below. I will respond to all the comments, get you guys answers, make sure that you are really well educated on trust funds. If you enjoyed this video, please check out the description below. There is another video that I think you will enjoy. Also, important disclaimer, reminder, this is not tax advice, legal advice, financial advice, investment advice. If you need advice, please reach out to a professional that is legally able to give that advice. Thanks and have a great day.